Hello there folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss on different topics about spirituality, dream interpretation and game interpretation, game design and other topics, psychology at times. Um, Also, I'm willing to offer my aid towards game developers and designers who are working towards creating their own video games and they might need someone to test them. Um, I don't mind, being hinted of some towards some, games, and I will offer some constructive criticism on that, as I have a habit of breaking things down to the minutest of details. Now, the topic of today is, I wanted to discuss about a bit about gender confusion and the such, but I decided on deriving it onto a topic more like, are you a female and you're wondering whether you're doing your best to draw a guy's attention, and for some reason, whatever that is, they're not taking you into account. Well, if that's the case, and it can also work the other way around, um, I might be someone who may help with a few points. So this actually happened in my existence, and to put it clearly, it's my empathy that kind of presented me with that. Now, as opposed to most guys or many guys who usually try their best at impressing females and they succeed or not, that's their point. In my case, I've kind of been the one towards whom females would gravitate. But again, there was, you know, in my life, I have been quite a very migratory student. Okay, as a pupil, I've been through three different kindergartens, two elementary schools, three high schools, and in the last high school, in two different classes, as well as two different universities. The first of one which I flunked, and I also did a master degree, and several so-called self-improvement courses. um, so I got to know quite some people, and in many of these collectives, okay, in which I've been through, in many of these situations I've been through, I'd find a very few people, okay, two or three usually, that I would go on the best with, okay, and in some cases it was guys, and in some it was a girl, but usually there was like a kind of a balance, okay. There were very few situations in which I was, drawn specifically by a certain girl in that collective. And besides this, the point is I've been obviously, sexually attracted towards a lot of girls, because having been through a lot of these collectives, it's sooner or later bound to happen irrespective of your gender. You're definitely gonna feel attracted towards someone. Now, for some reason, I have been kept somewhat away, but not by my parents. I've somewhat kept myself away from all of these, and of course, masturbating and fantasies about certain things, and certain like how you would want certain fantasies, and how you would screw a certain girl. Um, this were not something that avoided me, okay. And being someone with a very great imagination, I wouldn't invent a lot of stuff, but definitely I've been through that, okay. But for some reason, I've somewhat kept myself, or let's say my guides or other forces, kept me somewhat away from all these females, as if there was never gonna be, there was nothing ever bound to be sexual with those girls, although I'm sure there may have been a lot of, you know, opportunities. For some reason, and for a very long time, I might say even now, I'm not that knowledgeable of the typical female subterfuges, because usually they will nudge you, they will softly poke at you, they will look you in the eyes, they will do literally anything possible to draw your attention or subtly tell you something. um, but usually that's, or very rarely that works towards a guy, and unless they have some experience in that, as a girl you'd be much more successful if you actually tell the guy specifically what you want. And yes, in some situations it can actually work if you tell the guy directly wanna fuck, okay? With some guys it actually works, some guys, specifically like me, I don't like being, taken specifically to the idea at times. Although knowing someone's intention is never a bad thing, okay? But again, someone like me will always uh, chart the whole aspect, okay? I'm always investing a lot of resources into studying people because I'm interested in finding out about them, not necessarily their um, ideas, because I've rarely been the target of other people, mainly because, well, for some reason I was always the awkward one, and well, there were a few others around me, but for some reason I always had this idea of seclusion and keeping myself apart, okay? Keeping myself apart from others. I've actually been through a period in life in which I became even fanatical almost towards anything related to so-called feelings of love, which actually became prohibited in my existence. Well, that's another story for another time. The story of my fortification of the mind, so to speak. And well, let's say I became fortified enough that, I would secretly laugh when people would come and try to understand me, and they were like, for some reason, they couldn't read me one way or another. And well, I actually found certain people could in a certain way, but they couldn't simply read my mind in certain aspects because, well, I spent a long time simply barricading myself and creating certain ways to ensure that I would deflect attention. And one of my favorite tactics, inducing people into error, giving them false beliefs, because if a person gets a certain belief, they most likely will die for that, okay? They will simply um, get stuck into that, and the following day when they see that you are a completely different person, not because you are changing your masks but because that's how I am and how many people are, they kind of end up being mind fucked, okay? So throughout time I've been, sympathized, let's say, by many females, and at the same time I was unable to understand whether there was a bit more regarding this, okay? Like, I don't know if any one of those girls would want a relationship. um, Most likely kind of none of them for some reason, and at the same time it seems that through each of and every one of them I actually got to learn certain subtleties which, well, I didn't consciously learn. It's more like I feel they were activated within me. It's like they were somewhere there, but they just needed a confirmation or a nudge to be, pointed into existence. So, and well, into my conscious mind from the less conscious aspects and layers of the mind. So, yeah. And there has been this period at the master degree, during the master degree, where I met um, two females, okay? My father told me I had, I used to have, and I may still have it, but I kind of rarely use it now. I used to have a habit in which I would present certain people whom I trust different situations, and yes, some of those people were the right ones indeed, but I would speak to these people about these two females, and well, they weren't entirely important to me. I was at that period still recuperating from the fanaticism that I was in, and demilitarizing myself, let's say like that. Um, you know, Giving up on the Borg mentality, so to speak, in which I would remain one single entity and I just pick up anything I would require from others, and well, relationships to a minimal as possible, because I wouldn't simply waste time with other people. not necessarily, I can't say necessarily waste time. I wouldn't mind spending some time with others because I also had friends, but it was always that. Um, Now that I look back in time, it's like I always had enough. Like I had very few friends. I met a lot of people, but I always have had few friends whom I could, you know, trust at least a bit on, and well, I could handle, numerous school related, high school related, you know, faculty related things, and I've been over those. Okay, now when it came to these two girls, okay, my father actually told me a quote, and um it felt so, random. Okay, it felt so random mainly because he said, "Be careful with the two; they might become jealous." Okay, and I said, "Oh, what? They? No, thanks." Okay, I was always interested in this idea that there's always someone better than me. It's always something. Um, I'm not necessarily the best, and it's better if they actually find someone else. At the same time, these two females actually acquainted me with a third one, and we actually had a group of 7, 8 folks that we got on the best. Like they were much more compact than I was. The main, like the main rule of thumb was that I would never dance, and of course I will never ever dance. So the point is, there was actually a night in which we went to a so-called club just to hear a certain little concert. Then the club music began, and I was like, "What the fuck am I doing in here?" And I kind of left the 3 girls in there because they can handle on their own. And it's kind of awkward when you realize after a while that those girls were somewhat trying to draw my attention, and one of them would actually even ask me to dance with her, and I was like, "Nope." I said I won't dance, and I stood there like a stalactite. "You're not gonna take me away from here," because I said I'm not gonna dance. Um, so this so-called relationship, well, it's not kind of a relationship because I wasn't in a relationship with uh, any of the three. Um, Most likely, they actually started creating certain beliefs about me, more or less, and slowly and surely it became a bit more distant because like I took part in some of their games and such. I would meet uh, with the group at someone's house, and it's not been necessarily the best like experience for me because I knew I was not inducing them the best sensation ever, but I simply couldn't be like them. Okay, they were like much too detached from the world, and from my standpoint they were much too somewhat subconscious, I could say. Okay, they weren't like me to analyze each and every possible detail, and well, many of those, it was just like I was some kind of animal. Okay, as if everything was somewhat targeting my well, I can't actually say survival because I wasn't in a survival stage necessarily, although the entire society vibrates and stinks of survival. Um, but I was always on the lookout for like literally everything. I was like, always in uh, enemy territory, always scanning everything, and well, meticulously gathering data on every one of those colleagues and the such. And I was always wondering and asking myself why I simply can't be like them. And one of the girls, she was technically with, theoretically, in a couple with someone else, and she kind of uh, seemed interested in me, and the other two possibly. For some reason, it gave me the impression that the other ones were somewhat less. I was capable somewhat of understanding some deeper aspects. I could explain certain things, and well, I was the one to apparently know a bit more than the others, but I'm not presenting myself as necessarily better than others. It's most likely how the situation may have been. Again, I was unable of understanding, the subtleties of others, but we actually got to discuss different, more like what people call, societally speaking, intimate matters. And well, I found out several things about girls. I told them several things about me, and well, hopefully they didn't generalize those as for all the guys, but well, I think they had more experience, okay? Now, it's probably gonna be very amusing to some, it's probably gonna be a subject to pick on. I've never actually had any relationship in the sense that I simply either disallowed myself from, or I wasn't simply knowledgeable of what the heck a certain being wants from me, be they female or male. Okay, if they were a female, they might be as enticing as possible, so long as I didn't have any knowledge of what their plans might be for me or towards me. I wasn't interested in them at all. Sure, there were each of the three was more enticing than the other. They were, you know, distinctive personalities, and they were, like also physically pleasing in their own way, and gracious in their own way, let's say. But the point about the three was, it kind of gave me an impression that they wanted to impress me. They wanted to spend closer time with me, but there was this force that simply kept me and them apart, like a force field. Okay, it might have been fate, although I don't believe in fate. It might have been spirit guides, angels, or well, I'm placing my bets that it was just me. I simply preferred keeping a barrier from them because I knew that I was a wreck. Okay, like a very superficial relationship I could have. Okay, many people actually have such superficial relationships. They just like someone, the other one likes them. It's more like a codependency, and probably they fuck a few times. They have some mental and emotional attachments, and attachments usually they are given birth because of the idea of the so-called codependency. And well, people expect many things from the other, and well, expectations are kind of rarely met anyways, so they would simply suffer, let's say. But for some reason, and low self-esteem, low self-love, they would simply agree to induce even more pain on them. So I was slightly knowledgeable of this, like the point was I never had any relationship, not because I couldn't. Okay, I wasn't that much of a problem. I always had patience, and I still have patience, and it's one of my flags. Okay, it's one of my banners. It's one of my most representative aspects, although I've learned to tweak it and make it function more like priority based, instead of just having patience towards each and every person and every possible situation. And I keep getting signs to simply take myself into account much more often, because well, I kind of haven't been taking myself on the first place in forever. Okay, so I have to prioritize myself a bit more, because if you don't take care of yourself, well, you're not gonna be in your best shape or in a good shape, so you're probably gonna be a hindrance on others as well. So the first point is in what I wanted to say, and I needed this parenthesis, and I can still speak on this so much, but let's not dive too much into details because I don't want hours long videos. First of all, if you try to do something, okay, that definitely says an expectation. Okay, you're doing something towards someone because to show someone something. That's more like people pleasing and or expectation. Okay, when you have an expectation of someone, it's not gonna always be met. Kind of expectations are rarely met anyways, because people also set high expectations anyways, because well, no one trains them to start with small expectations and gradually increase. And then there is this bigger problem. Okay, when your expectations aren't met, you're suddenly gonna react to that, and you're gonna label all sorts of imaginary things to that person. Okay, you're gonna label that person in all sorts of imaginary stuff and titles and the such. You're gonna call them this way and that way. Probably they're not interested in you, or I don't know, there's probably some greater problems within them that they have to handle, and you have to understand certain things will happen. Okay, each and everyone is simply dishing out a lot of negativity. Okay, each of the girls actually had their own traumas as well. You know, they were quite mature, probably, I don't know, they were definitely more mature than me. They were handling on their own, and you know, I was still interested in video games and living life as a child. Okay, it wasn't that I was child-minded. Okay, I had my own sense of wisdom, but the point was I was simply more interested in being comfortable. It's something that, you know, not physically comfortable necessarily, but more like emotionally comfortable. It's been a big lack that I think I have taken from the family, more like, let's say, family, probably ancestral karma that, you know, sooner or later I had to deal with. And what I understood was that I actually had to meet those persons throughout my life, and these three girls, I didn't mind meeting them. I actually had a lot of, you know, um I had many memories with them, funnier, somewhat kinkier, but you know, nothing sexual, nothing, you know, over the top. Okay. Um, and yes, I've had some regrets, I can say, but I kind of, it was more like, you know, the only regret was that I didn't get to fuck them. But the question would be, why would I simply want that? And of course, going beyond, you know, with imagination only, I said, well, if I did handle that, the question was actually, okay, and what next? You know? And of course, in time, answers started popping up. They also had their own issues, you know, they also had their own family issues and, you know, their own traumas and the such. So uh, it only later became more knowledgeable that I simply wasn't interested in taking up other people's traumas. Okay, so if you're wondering why the other person might not take you into account, also take this as a possibility. Okay, you don't know anything about that person, you don't know how sensitive they are, especially if they are someone like me. I mean, it's not hard to realize that I'm somewhat sensitive, but you know, usually sensitive people either open up too much or they don't open up like at all. And you know, when people would take me into account, I always seemed and kind of for long portrayed myself as a perfect shape, and not perfect in the sense that I was perfect, okay, but because a perfect shape is very hard to, you know, not identify but simply criticize and, you know, pick on. Okay, because if you take, for example, sci-fi, okay, and you see, let's say, a certain few ship designs, okay, that you're not too familiar with, probably are not comfortable with, you might say, okay, this kind of doesn't sound logical. But the idea of sci-fi, okay, the pure sci-fi, is to have you ask yourself questions, not take things whether they are logical or not, because they are logical to your mind here on this planet. Okay, those things are just pure imagination. Sci-fi is just imagination. Okay, who knows how that ship actually really truly works. Okay, it's not the purpose of sci-fi to define you how the things in there work. Okay, it's up to you to imagine how they work, not how they wouldn't. Okay, and become fanatical over that, and it's no, it should be like this, it should be like that. Dude, it's just fantasy. Why are you fighting over fantasy? Okay, that's what people are doing. They're fighting over fantasies. They don't know anything about themselves, or they have, again, beliefs that they know themselves. But the proof they don't know things about themselves is that they don't know things about others. If you can't relate yourself to others, it means that you simply don't know anything about yourself. If you know things about yourself, at least you will find a few people you can relate yourself to, and you can simply learn from them, because you will realize more or less that there will always be some similarities. Those people came into your life for certain lessons, and there is also a certain similarity if you look very, very deep. Okay, I had family issues just like the three girls had, and well, to a certain extent, the first female whom I ever liked, she was overly confused, and again, that was somewhat of an issue regarding me as well. And she was always the one who would live separate from others. She always wanted to be herself and live in her own bubble, and well, that's kind of what I was as well. To a certain extent, there will be similarities in between you and the people you will be meeting. So yeah, all this being said, take into account that that person might actually be sensitive. They might actually sense a lot more than you can actually take into account. And if it's about women, they might be a bit more sensitive, because usually, emotionally speaking, females are, women are a bit more sensitive, okay, or they may be even more sensitive, depends. But I'm not pinpointing that all the females may be like this, because not all humans are in touch with their emotions. And people who run away from their emotions, they kind of become dead in a way, because your emotions are the only thing that you'll remember on your deathbed. Okay, so running away from your emotions is kind of like committing suicide uh, in bits, okay, bit by bit. So when it came to the idea of the perfect shape, okay, all the sci-fi have, their typical ships, right, with certain shapes. Most of them are, if you divide them in half, they are equal on the left and equal on the right. That term is kind of skipping my mind, right? Some are not that equal, right? They're more like irregular shaped and as such. But suddenly imagine that you're meeting a ship that is cube shaped, okay, or has the shape of a sphere. Now these are perfect shapes, okay, and I wouldn't attribute these because I would consider myself perfect, okay. I never ever considered myself perfect, but I knew I was different, and I knew I was very knowledgeable of the fact that humans would have a very uh, hard time trying to identify things about me, because when you see those different, uh, shapes of ships, okay, there's always something you can pick on. Why the deck is over there, why this and why that, like Federation ships from Star Trek, they always have their engines on the back. They can fire their weapons in kind of any direction, right? uh, and like, take any universe and any ship into account, you can actually consider them, and you can pick on certain things, and this and that. But when you meet a cube or a sphere, okay, the question is, how do you pick on that? Okay, like, wherever you look at it, it's the same thing. Okay, it's almost monotonous. Like, the sphere is a perfect shape. It's like, it doesn't have any it doesn't have anything to stand out. And again, I was kind of that thing as well. And when I would get into a new group, I would just go into my own corner and handle my own things. And people, because they have to label you in some way or another, sooner or later they would come to me and they would start asking me questions, because people can't live without thinking or probably even speaking about you behind your back, which it was kind of very important to me to make sure that people wouldn't speak too badly of me. It's again another thing I took from my family, and probably, well, this is something worldwide spread. It's not like my family only. And well, I'm still cleaning several aspects of this. So yeah, a person might actually be sensitive towards this as well, okay, towards understanding that there are certain things they don't like about you. They may not be fully conscious of those, but they might feel like, in my case, there is a wall, okay, I don't want to cross towards that. Okay, now when I was close to those three girls, for example, I was kind of rarely, like tempted, or like aroused around them. It would happen very rarely. It usually would happen when I was away from them, okay? When I would remember certain, you know, uh, a few of those kinky events or certain things we have been through. Now, well, I did get to help the three girls more or less, like more like the first two. The other one I was the least in contact with, but with the other two, they got the chance to see my cuddly side. Of course, they got the chance to also see my mechanized side, the so-called no negotiation Borg side, let's say something like that, because for some reason I felt that I would click the best with that race. Okay, I knew that I would have to achieve certain things and I would have to disregard a lot of things, but you know that emotionlessness and feelinglessness and coldness, when you add it to a fucked up mind and emotional state that my family members each had, and like all the shit that I took from them, and now they're not like recognizing anything. It's like they've always been perfect. It's like I was the odd one. I went to the psychologist also, and well, I told her from the beginning that I don't like psychologists, okay, and I can't take into account whatever they're saying. So yeah, there have been a few disciplines or curricula, whatever you want to call them. In my language they're called disciplines in Romanian, but I just told her, that I don't like psychologists and psychology. I couldn't simply define why, because everyone is obsessed with why. The why is just a dumb mental level, okay, and it doesn't have anything to do with spirituality. Many people nowadays consider themselves spiritual, but they just consider themselves spiritual because spirituality is not something that you explore with your mind. And I am in three so-called spiritual groups, and there is so much of this vibration in which they're just, everyone is spiritual. So many people are studying other people. They are what was that word, oh yes, probing you, and they also expect you to probe them. If you say that you can be good at something, and most likely they will disregard you if you say no, because you are just some kind of liar or something like that. They just have these little personas, these childish personas they're playing with, and they're just imagining they are astrally projecting, not being capable of distinguishing between their imagination and the such. And the simplest proof towards this is if you dare say anything against, or that might sound against their ideas, they will even die for their ideas. And this actually denotes a persona, okay? The intellect will always die for anything you would believe. So this is mind level, okay? This is mind level domination, control. The only reason why you would need control is because you don't have it, okay? And control is up till the third chakra, okay? And it just is reserved for the physical body, okay, for your physical existence. The mind is only good for that and for survival, okay? That is why it always asks a lot of questions. That's also a good thing, okay, because it shows that certain people are waking up, but still they are in that trap of wakefulness in which they are the slaves of their mind still, okay? They are becoming more conscious of things, but they are still the slaves of their mind, because instead of going beyond the mind, they just like shape things around, okay? They don't understand that their thoughts and their energy are just like plastilene, and you can simply mold it into anything, and every time they get a new answer, oh, that's it, okay? Believing something and then calling it the only reality possible, that's kind of a tragedy. So back to the topic, okay? There are many reasons why a certain person may simply disregard your attempts to discuss with them, okay? Or you can nudge them, you can softly press your breasts towards them, or different signs that you might be really interested in them, puffing up your hair and the such. the person simply may realize that in my case I knew I was a mess, okay, and I knew that they would require someone better because I knew I couldn't simply take care of those, okay. I couldn't take care of those needs they would have because, all girls have needs just like guys have, and when a female wants attention, they will simply signal it in any way possible. If you're not giving them the attention they need, they will simply signal it through like constantly bugging you or doing all sorts of things. Okay, so I was also a bit knowledgeable of any possible thing that could go wrong because hey, being a machine meant, being superior to other humans. Not because necessarily I was superior, but I've practiced this in time. I've practiced my mind so many years constantly again and again and again, overthinking and taking everything into account, and I kind of felt like a machine when surrounded by others because others, they would just take things the way they were. I would analyze each possibility, I would break it into aspects, and well, so many people might say, oh, but of course you would do that because you're a Libra. It doesn't have much to do with me being a Libra or not. One of the few things that I kind of know, it's, well, people say it's Libra bound or something like that, is yes, I can't make my mind very easily because I always break things to the minutest details, and like 10 minutes for a choice, I'd require a bit more than 10 minutes for a choice, okay. Not always, okay, not always. I can also be spontaneous because I may also deploy my intuition at times. Actually, I don't deploy it, it's already functional, but I kind of don't take it into account, or I simply disregard it, or I may simply not trust it. There are a lot of things that I have to handle within me, all while having to working on my video game projects, and well, also requiring sleep. Let's not forget about this. Okay, so a person might think that you know the present moment is important because it's the only moment when things can happen, okay, but some people, like me for example, they also like thinking at the possibilities, and yes, possibilities, the future, and the future is something that hasn't yet happened. But when you get to know a lot about a certain person and you know a lot about yourself, now that's when you can simply end up with realizing that you and a certain person are simply, it's not that you're not meant to be, who knows, maybe later you might actually meet again, but the point is, well, it's actually very simple, that at a certain time, at a specific time, you're definitely too much of a mess, and the other one may also be, and two messes meeting, they won't create necessarily something special, okay. And well, reading a lot about myself, doing certain tests, and introspection and the such, have really revealed to me in time that hey, I kind of have this kind of healing energy or soothing aura that some people may be attracted to. Very few situations happened in which people just came to me. They didn't know me, but they just came to me asking for help, probably because I don't know, out of the crowds they felt somehow that I would be the one to help them, and well, in most of the situations, if I remember correctly, I helped them, um, except those situations where beggars are implied. um, I usually give them money, but at times I kind of don't, because there are a lot of beggars in my town, but many of them actually have created, let's say, small empires out of the money that they're begging. Like, the only thing they're doing is beg for days, and people in here are very primitive in what their belief in God is, and they believe that if they give a bit of money, then they're actually fooling God for a better place in the so-called heaven. Okay, so I'm not gonna dive into religion, but hopefully this video was a bit informative. I know I have explained a lot, but at least I also provided a little story about something about my background. So all I can say is, well, I'm almost 30 years of age, soon I will be, and well, Do I have any regrets now? Well, no. um, I've realized throughout time that you know if I were to have a relationship with any of the females I'd meet, those relationships wouldn't have lasted too much, because simply I wasn't, like, I knew at a certain level I wasn't interested in anyone. I was always craving my loneliness, and being within my own premises, doing and handling my own stuff without a great need for anyone around. Of course, it didn't mean that I wanted to live like away from the whole civilization, and away from all the people, but just knowing that there are people around me, it was enough. Okay, not wanting them inside, and inside my mind, me thinking about them and such, those were just distractions to me. And at times I kind of feel they do. I've learned to tweak a bit my altruism as well, and boost my egotism as well, because when you're living in a world where you're surrounded by people with a lot, or at least some, narcissistic and or sociopathic traits, especially because of you know hundreds of generations of abuse and as such, these kind of give birth to a lot of little monsters. And the point is, society actually cares what kind of monster you become, because society breeds you as a monster, and then if you break a bit more beyond that, well, there are legal and social repercussions. Okay, so yeah, there are a lot of subtleties I can speak on, and you know uh, certain people might for some reason not like a certain thing about you. They might not even know what exactly. At times they might come up with something, most likely it will be invented, and some of the girls I'd meet, they would compare me with some of their like previous people they've been with, and you'd hear from time to time something like, he told me about, he told me that I'm fat, or I don't know, certain things like that. For some reason, females are interested in your opinion about them, and this kind of denotes a lack of patience. Okay, and a lack of patience is still a lack, and a lack means a little problem. Okay, and these problems are always something that I pinpoint. Okay, it's something that I'm always on the lookout, and well, I have my own few ways of realizing things about people, usually by studying, subconsciously studying their voice. There are certain things, or let's say forces within me, that do the job, and well, I just get the answers. Okay, that's what matters to me. If I get my answers, okay then. So yeah, they might actually, some people might actually come with some awkward thing, like, I don't know, they don't like their hair, your hair, they don't like a certain thing. It's definitely something else when they say that, or when they say it and you do feel it's kind of right. Don't forget that people kind of always present their own opinion about themselves. Okay, and this opinion may not necessarily be a good opinion. Okay, and not being a good opinion is somewhat bad, because you might take it for good, but it's basically, and in many situations, it's actually their opinion about themselves, which is always easier to post on others. Okay, and some narcissistic and or sociopathic people, at least having such traits, not necessarily the fully fledged ones, some of them, especially the narcissistic ones, will always blame you for their problems, and but in the end it's their point of view about themselves which they propagate over you, because it's much easier to it's much easier. Okay, it's much easier to simply put the blame on someone else. Okay, not taking responsibility over your own life. Okay, this is, or should be, so-called red flag. Okay, so usually it's that people feel certain things that uh, you know won't go together, won't go well or very well together. Okay, they won't necessarily go very well, because many people, when they like someone else, most likely they're interested in just the sexual part, but a relationship is much more complex than just that, okay? Plus, sexuality is also very complex, because from a spiritual standpoint it also implies sharing much more than semen, okay? Now, of course, people might use a condom, but it doesn't mean that energy bodies won't exchange certain karma and different things. I think I've actually made a video on that recently. So all this being said, I don't want to prolong this video too much. Feel free to ask me certain questions, feel free to share your visions, share this with others if you feel that it might resonate with them. People, especially the ones who are very close to you, those might actually be the ones who may not be listening to you, so it's kind of high time you directed them to someone else you think might help them. So feel free to like and subscribe, share, feel free to ask me certain questions, and when I feel ready I will post videos on that. I don't mind being audience driven. Don't forget, if you're working on certain video games and you want someone to provide you with some feedback, why not? So all this being said, take care of yourself, you are loved and appreciated. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you, and well, you're more than good enough. Take care. Ferinjan Board signing out.